for our second eulogy, I invite up the only grandchild that Amma never forgot, whose name Amma never forgot. Even in her old age, she would fumble with all of ours, but she never forgot Anil. So I invite Anil Methpara to give our second eulogy.
I'm going to preface this by saying this is probably longer than most eulogies, but I was reminded of a Mark Twain quote when he said that he prefaced the letter saying, "I'm sorry about the length, I didn't have enough time to make it shorter." So, okay. Amma was my grandmother and I was her grandson. But to put it more accurately, we were besties. There was never a dull moment, never an awkward silence. The most boring activities would be the most exciting things ever with Amma. There was a lot of laughter and smiles, a lot of storytelling and side eyes, a lot of hugs and ummas, and of course there was some anger and disagreements, but that comes with any good friendship. If Amma was happy, I was happy. If Amma was crying, I was crying. It's hard to describe the dynamic we had. I was like the dutiful, loyal grandson who would do anything to make her comfortable and happy, who also took every opportunity to roast her and to joke around with her. I don't actually have many memories of Amma when I was a kid. Like Jasi Chechi, I grew up with Amma and Appen, and the only thing that I remember right now is that I would always give stuti to Appen and Amma first after finishing rosary, and always saying, "Bye Amma, bye Appen," whenever we left the house. I will miss all the opportunities to be goofy with her. When she took out her dentures, I would always call her Palilatama and say things like Palilatama vandu. She was the cutest when she took off her dentures. Side note, but I always thought that if there was a cutest Ammachi contest, she would definitely win. Everything about her was so adorable. When I saw her walk around the house in her walker, or if she was just making some jiravelum in the kitchen, reading the patram, all the little things would always make me smile. And thanks to Mary Auntie, Amma would always be rocking the cutest sweaters. Another cute thing about her was the way she said English words. My favorite was when she says, "You're welcome." I remember during Halloween, I would have Amma give out some of the candies to the kids. And the kids would say, "Thank you," and I would say, "Amme, pilere thank you parimbola, ammenna parende." And then she would say, "Welcome." I don't know why, but that always melts my heart. More than English, I will miss being able to talk with her in Malayalam. Amma rarely got frustrated with my broken grammar and always seemed to understand what I was saying. She never made me feel self-conscious about speaking Malayalam and always made me want to improve. I also like being playful with Malayalam with her and try to make her laugh. When Amma removed her dentures and had her circle glasses, she would look like a turtle. So I would say, "Amma oru aamayana." It was both a funny way, it was both very funny and a good way to learn the difference between ah and ah in Malayalam. I also remember trying to make up Malayalam alliterations to say to Amma for fun and being very giddy to see her reaction. I think randomly one time I walked up to her and said, "Amma, tingalaichayil oru tadiyan tatta takkali tonda tinnu." I would also try to use new words that I learned in our conversations. One time, someone was coming downstairs, and Amma asked me, "Who's coming down?" And I spontaneously said, "Amma chelpeadoru yakshiyana." She would just respond, "Hoda," and go storm off with her walker, and I would die laughing. Okay, sometimes I admit I was a bit overboard on the silliness, and she would think my tamasha was simply goshti. But that was a unique part of our dynamic. Our relationship wasn't just based on this silliness. There was a real love and duty that I felt toward her. I tend to be very caring and nurturing, and Amma always needed something, always needed a hand with something. Whether it be making her afternoon coffee, putting on her music or Kurbana CDs, giving her massages, cutting her nails, or putting on her winter coat, I was her man. When she was in the nursing home, I became an expert at putting her in the bathroom and putting her to bed and making sure she was nice and cozy before I would say goodnight, give her a goodbye kiss, and tell her when the next time I would come was. This never felt like a chore. It never does with someone you truly want the best for. Instead, I always saw this as a huge honor and privilege for me, and I'm so grateful for the opportunities I had to be with her and to serve her. I also didn't have to do anything to feel like I was there for Amma. Sometimes each other's company was enough. A lot of times we didn't have to say much. At home it was her maybe drinking coffee and reading the newspaper while I was on my computer. When she was laying down on her bed, sometimes I would sneak in and lay down in the space between her and the wall. Both of us fit perfectly on that twin bed. Sometimes I would just lay down for just 10 minutes, but other times I'd fall asleep and we'd take a nap together. At the nursing home, we would watch whatever was playing on TV, with me occasionally asking some questions to make sure she was paying attention. I remember one time we were watching Shrek, and I was like, "Amma noka, karuda, karuda." I would go mostly in the evenings to the nursing home because I would always feel guilty about leaving her during the middle of the day because I knew that she would always want me to stay longer. The thought of Amma possibly being alone or helpless or unhappy often makes me emotional. There were several times where I would tear up while going to the elevator because she would be pleading to have her take her to bed, but the CNAs would want her to go to bed at a certain time. So that's why I would prefer to go in the evenings and leave once I put her to bed. The flip side is how emotional I would be when I saw how much I brightened her day. One time I remember walking in and seeing Amma staring blankly in a room full of other residents, sort of melancholic. But right when she saw me coming from the hallway, her face instantly brightened up and she had the biggest smile. Even during COVID, I would schedule video calls with her. I remember her smiling so wide, trying to tell the CNA who was with her, who does not know Malayalam, that, "Hey, this is my grandson," and being so proud. I remember telling her one time how happy I was to see her after not having a video call in a couple of weeks, and she responded by saying, "Aniye കാണാൻ എനിക്ക് ഒത്തിരി കൊതിയുണ്ടാവുന്നു." This melted my heart. It brought me so much joy to know how much she looked forward to seeing me. This alone was enough motivation to want me to visit her as much as I could. I'll miss the chances to share everything that was going on in my life. Honestly, I'm not big into sharing. Like when I got a new job, when I tell someone, even my parents or brothers, it's like whatever. But I would get super giddy about telling Amma all the new things that were happening. Or birthdays. I'm very low-key about telling people my birthday, and I don't really think it's a big deal. But I would always be super excited to visit Amma and share the news of my birthday and have her wish me a happy birthday. Part of me will always be saddened that I won't be able to continue to share these things. And like, to quote the poet Cloud 21, I've done incredible things with my life, but in my heart I'm not content because she missed it all. It was not just good things either. I would also share when I was feeling down. I had mentioned to some people that Amma functioned as my antidepressant. There were many times in the past few years I've been very stressed or overwhelmed, and being with Amma helped me put things in perspective, made me think of what really matters, gave me purpose and meaning in life. The past few months have been especially hard, and there have been days in which I would not be able to get out of bed and not be motivated. But whenever my dad told me that he was getting a video call from Amma, I instantly jolted out of bed, went downstairs without hesitation. Because while I was questioning whether everything else in life had any meaning, there was never a question when I was with Amma. For all the things I did for her, I really believe she did more to uplift me. We needed each other. I'll miss the stories she would tell me about, things back in the day. In high school, I became really interested in family history, Kerala, and how her experiences were like. Apparently, it was a match made in heaven, because if there's one thing Amma loves to do, it's to talk. I wanted to learn all that I could from Amma about her life before she died. So I wrote down some of the things that she had mentioned, including like the origins of the Metapara family branch, from the Chakalakuri and Tekekara family, which she learned from Appan's mom, and how Amma's family moved to Marari from Nediyashala, and the different family names that she had before. She also outlined her family tree all the way up to her paternal and maternal great-grandparents. So my great-great-great-grandparents. There's also a couple stories I wrote down, and I just wanted to share one. And this is from something I wrote May 26, 2012. Amma said another story today. Since next week is my last week of high school, I asked her to guess if I was going to feel sad on my last day as an unimportant question. After she said that I might be sad because I'd have to leave all my friends, I asked her about how she felt on her last day of school, the end of 4th grade. She was telling me how she wanted to talk, laugh, and be with her classmates on the last day. But since she did not have class that day, her dad said he really needed her help to plant ginger that day. She really wanted to be with her friends for the last time, but she was disappointed that she would not get the chance to do so on that important day. She said she never went inside that school again. She'd seen it, but never went inside. It was a very emotional memory, and Amma began to tear up. Then she said something like, "Well, imagine how it must have felt when I was a kid. At this age, I still feel sad emotions." As a kid, she must have thought it was unfair. She really wanted to be there, but she couldn't. I, as well as everyone, have shared these sorts of feelings once in their life. And this narrative helped me see a more complete humanity in Amma. I was able to see that we had shared similar feelings of childhood, of hope and disappointment. It helps me to remember that my grandma was also a child at one point. Even though she grew up in the olden days, a different time period, a different life, she still was a child, as everyone must be. I wanted to end with, or it's almost ending, with something I wrote during my senior year in high school. It was like an essay, in the beginning of the essay. When my grandfather died, I was shaken. I was only 8 years old, and it was my first experience with death. I was out of town with the rest of my family, and we had left my grandparents at home. On the car ride back, I remember sobbing. But why? I hardly knew my grandfather in any real sense. That is, I hardly recognized his existence besides when my dad told me to put on his socks for him. I knew that I loved him, but I did not show this to him. Now that he had died, I could never show him, and this spurred my agony. Later, I was determined not to make the same mistake of not having loved my loved ones again. I started with my grandmother. It was a gradual process, not even done with full consciousness. I just remember thinking that I did not want her to die without her knowing how much she meant to me. Now looking back at what I wrote 10 years ago, I realize why I feel so content about today and about tomorrow and about Amma. 2 words: no regrets. I put it all out there, and when the final buzzer went off, there was no reason to feel down because I knew I gave it my all, and did everything I could. And when you do that, you can live with no regrets. I want to take a brief moment to say how much pride I have in everyone here and everyone who helped take care of Amma. Amma was the luckiest person to have so many of her kids and grandkids be with her constantly throughout her life, and especially during the last years of life. It's not an exaggeration to say that I think Amma had the most visitors of any resident in the entire history of nursing homes. I remember being in the room at 2:30 a.m. this past Saturday with my parents, my uncles, aunties, right after Amma passed, and remember looking at the room and thinking, this is the dream team right here. I felt so grateful to be part of this team. I especially want to say something about my dad. Usually, we look to our fathers to show us how to be a good father. But over the past few years, what I learned most from my dad was what it means to be a good son. And I hope I can live up to that standard. Of course, part of me selfishly wishes that today was not happening, but life has a way of stubbornly making the inevitable happen. And like Amma always says, Marichalam ilingalam nale shavamadakana. Except in this case, tomorrow's funeral is today's funeral. And like my dad always reminds me, life goes on. Amma lived a full life. I want to end with this, a small prayer Amma would say tell me to say before going to sleep. And she also mentioned it was a good thing to say during your last moments on earth. ഈശോ മറിയം ഔസേപ്പെ ഞങ്ങൾക്ക് കൂട്ടായിരിക്കണമേ.